Hey everybody, welcome back to the Greg Chapman Show. This is mainly for facilitators and instructional designers, helping them uh, in the classroom. This kind of decodes facilitation, what goes into it, how do you create buy-in, how do you get people to, how do you get insights to happen, how do you get aha moments to happen, and of course, tips and tricks. So that's what the show is about. Today's guest, once again, is Bharat Babbar. Bharat's been on the guest a few times. Bharat's been on the show a few times now, and he's a dyed-in-the-wool facilitator. Many years as a facilitator, and worked at Maynardly as chief operating officer for the India office, and he's worked in LA as he studied acting in LA and worked with different actors. He's done lots of plays, films, TV, commercials, and many more things in acting. So today, what we'll be talking about is how does a facilitator create insights in the classroom? Is it important to begin with? Why is it important? How do you create it? Do you chase insights? A couple of questions coming up for you. So welcome to the show, Bharat.
Thank you, Greg. It's such an ego boost to just listen to you. I think every time we begin this and you talk about me, you're like, let me feel good about
Yeah.
myself before we get there.
So all of it true. What the hell is an insight, man?
Insight is okay. I think I have a perfect story for insight. When I joined my organization, there was a mentor to our organization, and his name is Nigel Hughes, and he was part of Maynardly UK, and so everyone would aspire to become Nigel as a facilitator. And when Nigel was first visiting us, the first time I was going to meet him, there were all these stories about him that seemed like legendary. So one of the stories says that Nigel was here and he was delivering this in-person workshop. And our stage manager, somebody was there to assist him, Prem. Prem was just sort of setting up the room. And just by the way Prem was putting up the posters, apparently Nigel walked up to him, and I believe he must have, he asked him something on the lines of, how far along is your wife? Uh, and
Without knowing him from before, right?
Yeah, but not generally. Nigel comes here for a week or so before he heads off again. And this was news that Prem had not shared with any of us or anyone in the company. But it was suddenly this thing like, how did Nigel know? And everyone talks about Nigel's level of insight. And I think upon being probed, Nigel just said the amount of detail and precision and dedication with which he was working that morning seemed like there was something big on the way, something that he cared about. And when he said that, it was revealed that his wife was pregnant. So yeah, I think that's quite legendary when it comes to insight, isn't it? Something so magical or alluring about it. And it's almost like, if I had that skill, wow.
If I had that skill to see inside a person's mind and what's happening. So that's how you're defining it, right?
Yeah, insight, literally like insight. You're able to see the person, not just see the person, but really see the person.
And I'm sure it takes a lot. I'm just going to hide behind that little word and say it takes a lot, to get that insight. And now I've got many questions running in my head. So, for example, does one need to be of the level of having that kind of insight, like you just narrated, and only then be able to create insights? Can creating insights for participants happen even if you don't have that kind of level of insights? So all those questions happening in my head, and I was just thinking, for a facilitator to create an insight, I'm just, there's no data behind this question, so disclaimer going on there. Behind the statement, for a facilitator to create, it's important for facilitators to create insight. That's how you're there to create transformation. You're there to bring about change, you're there to help people, you're there to take them to the next level. And we're talking all behavioral stuff over here. This is not so much for technical trainings, but for leadership or self-awareness and the like. So you're there for creating transformation, for changing someone. And I'm saying, therefore, it's important for a facilitator to be able to create insights within his or her participants. What do you say to that?
I have mixed feelings towards that. Insight is an impactful thing. I think there's no denying that. I think insight could be both. One, the facilitator providing insight, and then when suddenly a facilitator is able to do that, there's this whole thing of, wow, that person, that skill, they're able to look through. So it's quite tempting as a facilitator, that need to really build that insight muscle. But
insight creating muscle.
Or it could be about, I think it could inherited muscle, grown muscle.
No, I'm saying it's important for the facilitator to create that, to build that insight creating muscle.
It is something that can be tried. Why not? But I remember in my organization, when we were sharing all of these stories from Nigel, this pressure about being this insightful facilitator became so big that, in my opinion, it actually started creating a lot of doubt in young facilitators. And this whole thing of, how do I get there? And it seems like such a foo-foo concept. Like, how do you see from somebody putting up posters that the wife is pregnant? It's like,
I know what you mean. What I'm taking away from this, you put the facilitator up on the pedestal. This is someone who can create insights, and the expectations going up. Now, the facilitator, if she or he isn't really done a lot of work on himself or herself, will try and live up to those expectations, and I know all sorts of things happen, like good and bad. So
now, it's such a tricky thing. Now, I do want to say that Nigel has been part of this work for eons years. He's been involved in so many projects. He's passionate about the work that he does, and he's 70-something years old. So just the amount of experience that he has is enviable in that sense. So I can also say that, or believe that, insight is an outcome of experience, of really putting yourself out there. But as a facilitator, I sometimes feel, yes, it would be lovely to be insightful, but is that my goal? Or specifically, is that what I want to chase when I'm delivering work? For me personally, I've come to realize that possibly not. I would rather just, and it's something that I say to myself before a workshop, is be present, be curious, play. I think it's just a mantra that or an affirmation I say to myself. And I think it's not about, for me, really looking for that moment to create insight. Sometimes I'm able to, and sometimes I'm not able to. But what I've come to do more is trust the process itself.
Yeah, but would you, while you're at the drawing board phase, before the workshop, excuse me, while you're at the drawing board phase, doing your design, the flow of the program, okay, would you have this thing at the back of my mind? Hey, I got to create some insights. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things I'm doing. Here, and here is where insights are going to happen. This is how I'm going to do it. Would you do that? If you don't do that, again, I'm just getting this out of the blue. If you don't do that, could you still talk to some of the facilitators out there who would like to do that? What is your take? What is your advice to them on that piece?
If they would like to do that, then absolutely they should go for it. But I don't think it should be driven, or there's no should here. Uh, I think that chasing insight sometimes can just be too pressurizing, and sometimes can take you away from the objective of what you're there for. I do rather, when I create the design, I want the design to be insightful for the purpose, for the person going through the design, rather than as the facilitator taking on the responsibility that I am going to give you insight. I want the design as a journey to be insightful for somebody who's going through it. For me, I feel that's a better route to go. Now, this does not say that I'm not working on building my insight capability. It is an alluring theme and something magical about it. And it'll be lovely to have it. But I don't know if I want to say that. That would be narcissistic of me to say that I want to be that facilitator who, when sees you, can really see you and tell you. I would rather you go through the journey and experience it for yourself.
Exactly. So how would I take that same thing and put it slightly different way? I am going to be that facilitator who sees you and tells you your fortune, versus I'm going to be that facilitator that sees you and brings out, rather than tell you stuff that elicits epiphanies or any drop moments for you that can. I was listening to Tony Robbins. You either, two kinds of people, either you like him or you hate him, you love him or you hate him. So you know, one of the pieces he was giving in his introductions, when he talks about himself, when he introduces himself, he says 29, 30 years or something into the trade. And he says he deals with suicide victims. You know, he needs to be there when the thing is happening, when the person's about to commit the act, or he works with athletes when they're completely burnt out, right? Not so much physically, but more mentally. And he says, I need to be there and create that that shift in the moment. Otherwise, it's gone. The race is gone. The match is gone, and you know, then you can keep working at it. So, and he says, you know, so 29 years or something like that, he says he hasn't lost a case to a suicide case. Anyway, so you know, I'm taking that and I'm saying, so it is important to, in a sense, be able to bring out, may not be tell, but bring out, facilitate the insight from your participants or from a person.
I think so too. Absolutely. I think what I'm just doing over here is saying that I'm not necessarily responsible for it. That I will come back to you and say something life-changing to you. But what I'm hoping is that when you go through the process, the design, the journey, the design should do that for you. The experience of it should do that for you. So I would put in my energy towards creating that narrative and that design that will hopefully take someone on that path, and by the end of it, get them to realize certain things that are happening within them.
You're a movie buff and so am I. And what you're saying reminds me of the movies. So in a movie, broadly, there are three pieces. You have the actor, you have the story, and you have the director, right? And
a lot more, but yeah.
I know I just had to get that one out there for you. So yeah, of course, a lot more. But if just reducing it hugely. So never mind the lights and the sets and all of that. So so what you're saying is there's one model which heavily relies on the actor, you know, upon whose shoulders the story is carried. So what you could have is you could have you know, outstanding actors, the Tom Cruises of the world. I like the guy, nothing against him, but bad direction, bad storyline, the movie, you know, complete tanking.
Yeah. You
And
know, okay, how about this? Let's treat this as possibly insight, because I did go to film school and I had a little bit of insight over there. You
uh-huh,
know how we always think of the director, the actors,
uh-huh,
and perhaps say the production value that's going to give us or immerse us into that experience.
mhm,
What we don't usually think of
mhm.
is sound.
Is sound.
Sound.
Okay.
Now, like, here's the interesting thing,
Uh,
and I realized this in film school,
uh,
that sound can actually make or break your film. If you
mhm,
have the best actors but bad quality sound, it
mhm,
completely ruins the film experience. But when
mhm,
it's good sound, you never really notice it.
mhm.
It's seamless, so it's not something that we ever usually pay attention to.
I'm forgetting his name. Zimmer, no? Christopher Nolan's.
And
Yeah,
yeah.
he's a great guy from
Mm.
with the background sound and all. What was that movie? The recent movie about war. I'm forgetting the name of that movie. Where he made the one before Tenet. Tenet is
Oh,
Dunkirk. Dunkirk. Yeah, I just pulled that up.
Dunkirk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
So sound is also what you're talking about specifically as, say, the soundtrack of the film. But I'm also talking about the way dialogues are dubbed, captured, recorded. Even if there's one rustle on a microphone when there's a, oh, look who popped in, hi.
yeah, yeah. Mm. Okay.
So that one rustle can completely ruin your ability to listen to a dialogue clearly and therefore take you away from that immersive experience, so to speak. So all aspects of sounds when I think about it, and that's when I realized that actually sound plays such a major role. Not the soundtrack, but also the dialogues and how they are captured and the equipment that's being used. And I imagine a sound engineer is possibly the least recognized in that
Right.
sense. How
Right.
often do you walk out of film saying, yeah, the sound engineer did a fantastic job
Yeah.
recording the dialogues on this one?
Absolutely.
Because when they've done their job correctly,
And has done
you
the
don't
job.
notice it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I walked out of Tenet saying, wow, the sound director's done an awesome job. So anyway, but yeah, I know what you're saying. It gets missed. And so absolutely. So we're saying you've got the director and the story and you've got the actor. So when it comes to insights, it's coming back. You're saying when it comes to insights, there are two ways of looking at it. Either the actor is carrying it on his or her shoulders, or you've got the design and hey, catch. Yeah. So, or you've got the design and the storyline, the design which is comparable to the storyline or the direction, which can
The
give.
whole experience that brings about that immersive
Absolutely.
effect or reflection around it. So I would rather focus on the design, creating that journey. And in the process, if I'm able to connect certain dots, have the courage to explore those dots.
So
But not necessarily just go in that I am going to now create this shift.
right.
Uh,
So how do you get the design to create opportunities for insight?
In that way, I want to make sure that the design is creating space for people to let their guards down, make sure there's vulnerability. And therefore, through theater, we do a lot of playing, because playing is very in the moment. Playing takes you away from your role, your responsibilities, your designation, your experience. It's such a great equalizer. Uh, and through the process of playing, and while you could be exploring anything, and suddenly there's like a, ah, I find myself, for example, as simple as everyone knows planning is such an important thing. Everyone talks about how plan well, your execution becomes fast. In fact, even on film, we say pre-production. The time spent planning is so important because production is an expensive process to go through. So you want to make sure you're getting things done right in production or minimizing. So everyone knows this cerebrally. And sometimes when you're working on leadership in your teams, and there is this game that we play that actually requires planning, and people know that planning is important. But when they see the game, it's so deceptively simple that people just sort of dive into it and discover the problems and challenges while they're going on. So if it's a race against time and I say, okay, fine, this is something that typically people are able to do, say within 10 minutes. But what happens is, in the absence of planning, people end up spending so much time just identifying the problems. And then one simple thing is, we all say planning is important, but what happened right now? What stopped you? And it's such a like, yeah, why actually, why didn't I stop and plan? So as much as, so I want to rely on the experience bringing about that realization, rather than me looking at a person and saying, you know what, the way you entered the room today and the way you sat down, I realize you don't plan a lot. I don't want to go there, because I don't think I want to take that attention and say like, I am the star of the show and therefore I am going to impact your life. But I want to facilitate that journey. And at the end of the day, I don't want you to be dependent on me as the facilitator to do that for you. I'd rather you become self-sufficient. So I feel it's important for the facilitator to sort of wane off. And I think that's important. Having said that, uh, I still will acknowledge that insight is very powerful, and it can persuade if you're able to catch the right insight at the right moment and share it with someone.
Yeah, in fact, what you said is directly talking to insights. You know, you're using play for creating insights, and I think it's a great source for insights. There's somebody who did a TED talk, I'm forgetting who, and on his TED talk, what he showed was a polar bear and a dog, right? And somewhere in the Arctic, and the dog was chained up, right? And the polar bear approaches the dog, and you know what's going to happen next. In the next minute or two, you know, there's this huge pounder polar bear, and it's a nice dog, but stands no chance and is chained up, right? So this dog, instead of going retreating into fear or trying to be aggressive, so either of the two poles, begins to demonstrate play-like behaviors. And that polar bear, looking at that, mirrors it. And you know, very quickly, in a matter of minutes, what could have been the end of one and a meal for the other actually becomes, you know, almost a dance. And these guys are playing together, and the polar bear goes away after that, and the dog survives. So yeah, I think the importance of play. A sentence which comes to my mind is, play or fun is serious business. You know, it's not something that's wing. It's something that you need to understand, learn, and how to use play. I think that's important. And that sometimes play gets a bad name when it comes to facilitation, because yeah, it's song and dance. Let's get some song and dance, get over with, let's go. But I think, how is it connecting to the metaphors from your office? How is play being debriefed? What are the important, there's so many things, what are the important questions, and there's so many things. So I think that serious fun is serious business. I think that's the first piece I'm taking away. You know, I think the second thing that's coming to my mind as you speak is, and that's something that play does, is feeling versus knowing, right? I know something versus I feel something. Now, try this at home, guys. Actually not. So if you have an automatic vehicle, right? If you have an automatic, whatever, or your friend has an automatic vehicle, anything, a car, Jeep, whatever. And this is how I learned, actually. I had never, a few years ago, I never driven an automatic vehicle. So I sat in it and I tried driving it like a manual, you know, which is to say, I knew there's an accelerator and a brake. And I put my left foot on the brake and my right foot on the accelerator, right? And it, you know, the brake just went down too hard and the car slammed to a halt. And I said, hold. You got to press it slowly. I know this. So I tried it again. Again, the car slammed to a halt. And as much as I would try it, just didn't work. Until, of course, my friend told me, hey, you know, you're ruining my car completely. Is this a new style? Don't try it. Just use one leg, keep the other leg down. And then, of course, then it was just smooth. So I'm just saying, knowing that you're supposed to do something a certain way versus having it wired into you.
Yeah.
You know, for so many years, it's not so easy unwiring it or rewiring it. That's not so easy, man. So
what you're saying, it reminds me of this video that I really love. I don't know if you've ever seen these episodes of, his name is Dustin. I think his show in YouTube is called Smarter Every Day. I don't know if
smarter every day. Okay.
So there's this lovely video that talks about how knowledge does not equal understanding, and it's called the reverse bicycle video.
Oh
And
yes,
it's
yes,
lovely.
yes.
I love that video because you think of as riding a bicycle as something so easy. You pick it up. Hopefully, you pick it up in childhood, and you know that I know how to turn, swerve, ride a bicycle. It's simple. But one interesting thing that happens in that video is I believe he has some engineering friends who, as a prank on him, they sort of reverse how the handle and the wheel work. So if you turn the handle to this direction, the wheel goes here and like this. So in a typical bicycle, that's what would happen. But this is what's happening over here. It feels fairly simple enough. And when I look at that bicycle, I feel like I could ride it because I know how to ride a bicycle. So I sort of begin to anticipate, okay, so if I have to turn right, I'm just going to have to sort of take my handle a little towards the left, and I should be able to manage that. But no one in his video, and in fact, I think he traveled the world showcasing it at educational institutes, and he challenged people to ride it for, I think, a few meters, and he offered them $100. No one could do it. And then he took it upon himself as a challenge to try it. And yes, it talks about hardwiring the process, but also that while riding a bicycle seems deceptively simple, there are so many things that go, how you're holding your body, the way you're angling the weight. There are little things that are happening that go into the success of riding a bicycle. So I think the entire thing was about how knowledge will not equal understanding. It really comes from doing, I guess, or experiencing. You need that hardwire to happen.
Yeah, and I like it, the whole idea of play, because plays make it non-threatening.
Yeah.
You're taking off the work scenario, the professional scenario. You say, hey, go play. And plays some wires are connected to fun, some wires are connected to easiness, some wires are in your head connected to a lot of nostalgia and childhood and all of that. So and those are the neurons that end up firing as well, which or if used well, you could segue into getting the other synaptic connections which aren't connecting well, firing differently, rewiring differently to perhaps do.
Because inherent patterns are bound to play out even in a play space. Whatever is inherent to you and how you approach then begins to appear in different aspects.
I think like in a previous episode, we spoke of psychological ins.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good example of a psychological insight. It's giving you, the facilitator, and the person going about it, an insight into what the hell's really happening in your mind.
A few years ago, I had this. I don't know if you've done this. There's the things called escape rooms, where basically you and a couple of friends, you're locked into this room, and you've given this 60 minutes to sort of figure out how to find the key. And there are some puzzles and things that you have to solve, and there are clues that you have to look for together. And then solve, and in the hope that within 60 minutes, you're able to find the key and allow yourself out of the room. And when I went through that experience, all I could think of was, if I was just set up a camera over here and just look at how people are interacting with each other, how are they collaborating, how are they speaking, how are they acknowledging, how are they working through some of these clues. It's such a treasure trove of behavior patterns that are playing out.
We got to set this up for our training programs, Bharat?
I would love to.
Let's just create a room or something. It got me thinking. Murder mystery. I think it is called the murder mystery or something like that.
There are different themes that are around it, but now you get these portable escape room boxes, and I think it's wonderful to explore some of these behaviors.
Oh, okay. Let's try doing that. So that's going to be interesting. So, how do you use play or any other modality to create insights? So I think in the question could be, I just want to just utilize this time as much as I can. So I think in the question could be also, what are the different modalities of creating insights? So play is one, what are some others? And then How?
So there's actually this framework that I learned at Maynard Lee, and this is their framework, and I took permission, so they said that it's okay for me to share. I'm so glad about that. But it's a simple framework, but I think it sort of takes you on the lines of what can
Super.
possibly help you create insight. It's called observe, perceive, wonder.
Write that down. Observe, perceive, and wonder. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
So step one is observation. For example, if I'm looking at you over here, you're there. So observable data, what I can see. So you're wearing black headphones. Uh, there's an image of a bookshelf behind you. There's some sculpture. There's something that says innovate this design or something on those lines. So observation is literally what is observable. You're wearing a blue sweater that seems like a check collared shirt.
Make me conscious already. Okay.
So exactly.
I get it. Yeah.
So the next step, okay, so here are my observations. What's my perception? My perception is, how do I build meaning to what I'm viewing over here? For example, my perception could be, I think you're wearing a sweater because it's cold there, or you're feeling cold where you are. So that's my perception based on, say, looking at the sweater. My wonder then would be, how do I take this context and apply it to another place entirely? Okay, let me try something. Let me take a risk. I observe that you have this image of a bookshelf behind you, this white bookshelf with something brown that I see at a slant on the side. My perception is that you have used this image as a static thing to hide what's your actual background. My imagination is, it matters to you how I see your workspace, and therefore the impression that it is creating on me. And therefore having the choice of a bookcase elegantly placed and everything. So how I perceive you in this context is something that matters to you, and therefore you've chosen this.
Spot on. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's the practice.
Okay.
To take observable data, create a perception out of it, and then take it to a place of imagination. What is that telling me about this person?
So, okay.
But the thing about this is, I think it's about practicing this without being worried about it, if I'm getting it right or wrong. Because when you get this wrong, there's a lot of rejection also. There's a lot of, no, actually, no, that's not my reason at all. I just, yesterday there was a leak over there, and I realized that all this, my wall is getting cracked, and it just makes for a bad thing. So today I've put an image. So, for somebody it doesn't land on, they will see like, no. So there can be a lot of rejection also. But I think to build this muscle, it requires a little bit of courage for actually just trying this out. And the thing is, you may not always get it right.
Yeah, and my question to you is going to be, and I'm going to come to this. So how does this create insight, right? And before you answer that question, so a word in this that stands out to me is not about being right or wrong, right? So there is observation, there is perception, but then there is not saying, you're not going from Sherlock Holmes in a Sherlock Holmes kind of a way, looking at his scuffed nails and saying, okay, so this is what he is. I mean, unless you're that good, you're saying, I wonder, what are the possibilities that this is opening up, right? And if I stretch that a little bit, the moment you arrive at a conclusion, say, okay, so I wonder what this is telling me about, let's say in this case for me, like you did this with the bookshelf at the back, saying, I wonder what this is telling me about Greg. And then you arrive at, okay, so this is what he's doing, or this is what he wants to project or portray.
For example, imagine I'm facilitating a workshop and there are people there, and every time I ask, okay, I need a volunteer, and I notice that there's somebody in the background, and they sort of raise, they're almost the first to raise their hand, but then somebody else is very quickly, okay, I'll be it, and then they sort of step back down again. So, and I noticed this say happening 3 times when I'm dealing with this particular person. So I could say, I've noticed or I've observed that the past 3 times when I've asked for somebody to volunteer, I've seen you raise your hand pretty quickly, but then somebody jumps up and you sort of sit back down. I imagine when you're in a Monday morning meeting or when you're in a strategic meeting, that you may have ideas, but sometimes when you see the energy of somebody else, you sort of let go of it and you're okay taking a back seat and not taking that center stage, or really owning up to that conviction that I may have possibly something. So now I'm saying something very, now I could be right, I could be wrong, but if I get it right, then that person will be like, oh yeah.
Absolutely. And I love the way you've put it in context with an example. I'm also thinking that same example, puts his hand up, steps back down, or a hand up, sits back down. This is what I observe, and this is my perception coming out. That, and then I'm wondering, excuse me, where else is this playing out?
Yeah.
How is it playing?
But what's the perception? First, let's break through it. So you saw the person go up and down 3 times.
Yeah,
so
right.
What's your perception about this person?
My perception about this person is, what comes to me instantly is, this person has a lot to say inside. And if there's a lot to say inside, and one of the tenets that I set up is, you cannot come up with a bad answer or an incorrect answer. So there is a lot of good inside. There's a lot of great stuff inside. Number one.
Yeah. So that action is telling you there's a lot of, okay. And now
Absolutely.
Take it to imagination.
No. So let me just stay with perception. Let me just stay with perception a little bit.
Okay, stay with
and
perception.
Then I would say, my perception is that whatever is inside is getting expressed halfways, right? So that hand going up, coming back down, right? Now, I would say that this is important because if I confront too fast, sometimes the person, no, nothing happens over here, so I'm also, making it a little more neutral and bringing in a lot more that's happening into my mind for that. So this is my perception. And now I wonder, so I could make it as open-ended, or I could start open-ended and say, I wonder where all this is playing out. I can wait for some responses. I wonder, second question, I wonder how this is playing out in a Monday morning meeting, right? I wonder how this is playing. So a couple of pieces like that. And if I've done my analysis well, which is informing this question, then now, okay, so I'm just stretching this a little more, and you tell me if I'm completely off the rails over here. So now I'm doing like a meta OPW. So now I'm saying I'm observing. So I'm observing. I'm directing my observation towards one people. I move it out of there and I ask the group, hey group, what do you observe? Hey group, and you can't say what I just said, sort of a thing, or you could put some parameters down. What are your perceptions from this? Where do you wonder that this could, where do you imagine this could be playing out? So now you bring the whole group, and also, and I think if you set background well, you're painting this big picture, and this person at the end of it is saying, observe, watch, before quickly justifying it away. Now tell me where it's coming from. And I'm assuming, and I think this is the part where you say, stop chasing insights. So this is not a hardwired piece that insight has to happen over here, but saying, okay, what is this saying to you? These people talking, I have observed something. What is this saying to you? So I think, if done well, if done with a lot of, I think the magic sauce in this is being mindful and present.
Very, very, very present. And the thing is, there is a bit of risk involved because you're always making these perceptions and your imagination from your own biases, cognitive biases that are playing out. So to be aware of, is this my bias or actually, and which is why I think one of the things that was taught to me was don't do this on the basis of one observation.
I was just going to say that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think the person who taught this to me, when I was in the previous organization, his name is Vivek, and he's the one who said, get at least three. And if you feel you find three observations that are beginning to go in the same place, then I think it's something that it's possibly a pattern. Don't just work off of one. And which is why in my example, I said, I've seen this person go three times this and this. Because see, the perception could also be you feel comfortable giving space to other people. And I imagine as a leader, you're not worried about taking center stage. You're there to support your team as well. And it could, depending on the context of the workshop, for example, if I have to challenge this person to take on center stage, then perhaps I'd go another way with my perception and boundary. But if it's to reinforce certain things, then I'd go another way. So there is a bit of tweaking this to your needs in that sense. But see, here's where it can get really wrong. I was part of this program where it was something to do with, let's just say, something to do with arts, and the facilitator over there, I noticed that whatever challenges the participants seem to be sharing, they would always sort of tie it back to the pandemic and how it's affecting us globally. And I
It's a
think
recent example.
it's a recent example. And therefore it started making me feel uncomfortable because I know that I was going through a challenging time, but that automatic assumption that, oh, it is a collectively challenging time because of the pandemic, that wasn't my reason. I was grieving the loss of loved one, and therefore my thing. And that's where, if I'm the audience, I feel like, don't box me in, or you don't really know where I'm coming from. Don't do that. So that creates this psychological disconnect. So the insight has the ability to really give you this credibility, and if you do it well, I can be like, wow, this person is brilliant. You know what, I want to hear more from this person, and can open up my mind. But at the same time, if it can go wrong depending on the level of risk you've taken, I can also be like, you know what, whatever. So yeah,
Bharat,
that's the challenge.
I think I think you can't get this wrong. Let me just say it that way. Make such a strong statement and say you can't get this wrong. Why do I say this? You can get this wrong if you're imposing your judgments on it. As you're talking, what's coming to me is that it's critical to set context for this really well, because it can also damage someone. I mean, if you go full blown and if you're asking the group, hey, you know what, but you haven't set context well, if you haven't made the space safe. I was having this chat with another friend of mine called Kinshuk. He was on another episode of the podcast. So he spoke of safety of the space, and then he took it up to the next level, saying make the space sacred. So, and of course we got a little into the distinction between the two. Now, if you haven't taken time to make that happen and just doing this boom upfront, so I think that's critical. And then looking for multiple occurrences and not just based here on one. I think the other part is questions rather than tell. And I think the third piece, when you're saying perceptions, you can easily tie it to the Johari and say, hey, you know what? You're saying something, you're reacting a certain way. This is facilitator telling the participant. This is how I'm perceiving it. And this ties back into what I'm saying, it can't be wrong. This is how maybe my perceptions aren't right, are completely misplaced. And I'm not talking about your example per se. I'm just pulling out of that. I'm saying maybe my perceptions are misplaced. And that's why I'm going to ask you a question. But the important thing over here is a couple of things. One, make it your own. Draw out the learning from this. Two, this is a safe space. Three, Johari window. This is also how people are forming their perceptions. Rightly or wrongly, we don't know. But is there a blind spot to be explored? Is there a little disclosure that needs to happen? Is there a little feedback that needs to be taken? So, that's how I'm looking at this.
Yeah, it could be. And I could definitely water it down and make the process of exploration a little more collaborative and therefore bought in. And I think that's why when we come to observe, perceive, wonder, it begins with I imagine or I wonder, because you're not saying this is what it is. You're saying this is how my imagination is.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wonder.
And Bharat, I mean, if you mix this with play, then that whole safety, I'm just thinking right now, I'm sure you do this, but I'm just connecting a previous dot to this dot, saying if you mix this with play, then here it becomes so much more powerful, and play becomes so much more powerful because you're entering sometimes unsafe places, and in facilitation, there's a real danger at times that the damage done, even not from the facility, from the group to a person. I've had that happen to me in a feedback session. It can be immense. So I think plays also can be used to set it up well.
Absolutely. Play is such a great way because within play, you can see inherent patterns play out. So they can give you opportunities for multiple observations. For example, if you're playing a game and how the team is coming together to brainstorm on ideas, or if you see there is somebody in the background who's sort of working with a white paper and pen, and they're trying to create all these permits, but not really getting involved in the process. What is that telling you about that particular person and how they approach something?
And then if I just go to that, I'm saying observable behavior.
Yeah.
Before jumping to, hey, you weren't involved in that whole piece.
Yeah.
Well, I was involved.
I was completely involved. I was trying to think. There was too much knowledge happening over there, and therefore I needed to sit down with a paper and pen and really work it out for myself. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you set the Johari up before, and then if you come into this person and saying, hey, now here's an interesting split, and this is the last thing I'm going to do on this one. I'm getting carried away now. But if you're coming up to this person and saying, hey, I'm going to use a little psychodrama here. Hey, person X, here's the observable behavior. You're yawning, you're looking around, you're whatever, some distracted behavior you're calling out. This is a behavior, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
All right. Now step out of your shoes, maybe literally step out of your shoes, step into the facilitator's shoes, or step into your boss's shoes. And there's this person. Maybe you get somebody enacting those behaviors. That's play.
Yeah.
And you observe this. What's your perception being built up?
Could be. There are ways to do this.
And then how would you wonder about that person? What would you, if I would say, I wonder, how would you complete that sentence? And so,
I wonder that when you're not bought into a particular goal that your leader has put for you, then you go about it at a transactional way. You're not completely engaged. So therefore you do only what needs to be done.
Absolutely. and even if that is the case, if you're doing psychodrama and if you're doing play, you're getting this person to step out and you're getting somebody else to role play this guy or girl, and then this person is talking to the person role playing her or him, then it becomes so much safer to give that feedback versus telling him, you don't take ownership, man. I can see how this is reflective of you're not taking ownership back at the workplace. Guess what's going to happen, right?
For anyone who is watching or listening, don't do that. Yeah.
Try it and let us know what happens. But yeah, don't do that. This on an aside. But yeah, so it's nice play getting combined with this whole model: observe, perceive, wonder. And thanks to Maynard Lay for bringing it, for giving permission. And Bharat, thank you for bringing it to the show.
My pleasure.
Once again, Bharat, it's been great having a chat with you, and I'm 100% sure almost every one of our viewers is going to get some value out of this. So,
Great is okay, but was it insightful?
Oh, that's a high five on that, right? And were you chasing it? So going to stop now, and looking forward to doing many more of these with you, Bharat.
Same here. Thank you. It's always lovely speaking with you. And I think this whole process of talking to you helps sort of cement my own experience, or sort of bring it into one place and think about it and reflect on it. So thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome, Bharat.